Video to Mike Martin. So for those that don't know who I am or Mike Martins are, I'll give you a brief introduction to myself and Mike. Now Mike has a comic book store, I believe, in Canada. Now he's someone who's lived and worked, from what he says, all over the world, and I don't doubt that, he probably has. I've used the comic book store guy, not in a derogatory sort of a personal attack sense, is because that's actually what his business is. So I've put his YouTube channel up there as well. You can subscribe to his channel. He's actually a pretty nice, reasonable guy. I sort of went pretty hard at him the other day. What people have to understand is I'm both myself and my wife are slightly disgruntled Army veterans. We were both full-time Army, and I only discharged about 3 years ago. So the political correctness and things I say that come out of my mouth, that sort of escapes me a lot of the time. I just say what's on my mind more so than a lot of civilians would. Now, that's not an excuse or anything, it's just explaining some of my comments which might have appeared or seemed harsh, which actually weren't from me anyway. And I just want to double down on I'm not using the comic book guy picture to shit on Mike's appearance or anything like that. I'm just using that as a sort of a plug for his business, because that's what he does, so I'm sure he's got no issue with that. He might even, I know he does have more hair than the comic book guy, so yeah, another picture he looked bald, but that one he actually does have hair. So unlike me, I'm actually bald, which is why I crop my picture at about there, which is about I usually keep my head shaved. That's actually a bit long. What I'm doing this video for is he's been putting videos out about the Australian property market and using information, cherry picking, certain properties in America and the United States and wherever, and the comparisons are they're not reasonable and they're not fair. Just the same word, not reasonable, not fair. They're not. What I've said to him is it's not an apples for apples comparison. Now I'm going to have to do this video in two parts because we have guys working on our power and internet in this area, so I'm just pre-recording this to upload it later, and I'm going to have to use a lot of realestate.com.au pages, which I can't bring up at the moment because my internet is basically dial-up speed or worse. So what I'm going to do in the first part of the video is I'm going to show you some data these are just some data points I use for the purchases of my real estate and what I do with my life. Now, myself, I said a bit about Mike and his business. Myself, I'm a retired property investor. I'm 40 years old. I invest in all kinds of things, everything from cryptocurrency, the share market, real estate, vacant land, renovations, income properties, growth properties, you name it. I'm either doing it or I do it from time to time. My main thing is real estate. I have a lot of streams of passive income. Now I'm not going to, give you my tax returns. I'm not going to give you specifics. You can take it or leave it as either I'm full of shit or I know what I'm talking about. Now the evidence should show you the things I show you that I do know what I'm talking about, and I'm not a mum and dad investor. I'm someone with more than 5 properties. That's all I'm going to say. It is in the millions. So I'm just going to have to, that's about all I'm going to say about my personal situation, because I'm always worried with these things about like identity theft and, little things like that, privacy issues. My wife is quite sick, she's a veteran, and we like to keep it a little bit private for her sanity. So we've, reason we're living in this property, which is the property you can see over my shoulder there, is when I got out of the army, my wife was quite sick, so she wanted an acreage, and I was doing the FIRE system, which there's I think it's Financial Independence Retire Early. So I sort of came up with that system before the acronym, before I'd heard the acronym anyway. I sort of started doing that for myself, and we put ourselves in a position where we could survive on almost no money at all, and I started doing that probably 7-8 years ago, and I really knuckled down over that time. We bought a lot of real estate. It's all rented out. We rented out expensive stuff, more expensive stuff. You're talking $500,000 plus properties to tenants, and we took on a little bit more debt to get our expenses way down. So all our real estate is cash flowing, positive. It cash flows to us. And we get tax refunds every year as well. There's benefits there with taxation and real estate that you don't get in other assets, as it is approximately 2/3 of the world's wealth, roughly, for a reason. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shrink this screen, and I'm going to apologise if I sort of jump all over the place. This isn't scripted. I haven't even written bullet points for this. This is straight off the top of my head. So I'm just going to shrink this window down, so you can still see me and Mike here, and I'm going to bring up some information. So the first one, some of this stuff is outdated because I don't need to look at this stuff every day. So there was a time when I was looking at this every day. I'm in the top 1,000 people that use realestate.com.au in Australia. So for all the users, every single person, probably global, that uses realestate.com.au, I'm in the top 1,000 people, and I know that because they send me an email every year and it says congratulations, blah blah blah. I don't really care. It's just an interesting statistic. I spend enough time looking at property, Australia, New Zealand, America, you name it. I look everywhere. London, I've got property currently all up the Queensland coastline, from the Gold Coast up to as far as Rockhampton. So I buy all kinds of stuff, and each property has a specific purchase, and it may change depending on what I'm doing at that point. So whether I need a growth property or whether I need a bit more cash flow for the next lot of financing, it just depends. Like at the moment, I needed a cash flow property. I bought a property for just under $100,000. The mortgage on that is about $271 a month. That's principal and interest, 30-year principal and interest. We don't have a fixed 30-year loan like the States. It's a 3 to 5 year fixed. I believe that's going to change. I believe they may bring in a 30-year fixed here, or even a 10 or 15-year fixed. Now that property, $271 a month approximately, rents for $240 a week. Now that's one property. It's under $100,000. It's $240 a week. I clear about $90 a week from that one property. Now that's just one example. Okay, that's a very, very cheap, affordable property close to a regional hub. It's quite a large, Rockhampton where that is quite a large area. It's probably comparable to Toowoomba if you know Queensland well, except it's a lot further from Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast, obviously. So Toowoomba's probably a little bit better, but it's similar to Rocky. Okay, Rocky has also Rockhampton. We call it Rocky here in Australia. Rocky has brand new houses up there for 200 and under, around the 200, 215, 230. You can get them for 190 at the moment, $190,000. So you're looking at a $600 monthly payment, which is peanuts. Okay. Now Rocky has the benefit of being in a mining region. Now that's both a blessing and a curse. It has all the benefits of mining, so the values can shoot up very quickly. It also has high wages, but low house prices. So the thing with the house prices in the mining areas is they can jump up 4 or 5 times in a commodity cycle, which I'll just bring you up I've got a commodity cycle. I'm sort of jumping around. I've already skipped house to income ratios. I'll come back to that. I'll bring this one in. I'll bring this one. So this is a commodity cycle. So Mike is in a commodity currency country, so that's a country which derives a substantial part of its income from commodities. So you can see here, obviously, that the commodity super cycle is going to benefit real estate in those areas. And also the bust. So both, which is why I don't invest in areas like Port Hedland. That is only commodity. I wouldn't invest there. Maybe as a speculative play, I would buy in Port Hedland, which is Western Australia. Even Perth is something that I'd probably buy in now, but I wouldn't hold it. I'd probably hold it for this next part of the cycle. So we've just had the mid-cycle slow down. We're sort of at the end of it now. The second part of this cycle is a good time to hold a Perth property right now, but I would be selling it or refinancing it and pulling the equity within the next 6 years, okay? 6 to 8 years to be safe. Now I can tell you why. I'll probably cover that in the video. So let's go back to the house price to income ratio. So this was in 2016. So 2016, 2017, Sydney and Melbourne were the highest, roughly, prices they've ever had. Now they've had 2 years, roughly, of downturn, and now prices are turning up again. Mike has done videos to that effect. He has done, I think, off the top of my head, because I do watch all his videos, I am a subscriber, he's done probably 2 to 3 videos that I've seen, unless I've missed a heap, that I generally watch what he has to, or at least read the titles and watch what he has to say. Often I just click away because it's just doom and gloom, fear porn, that it's not helping me. It's more like I'm curious as to what the normal buyer is thinking. So I'm beyond 5 properties, I'm not a normal buyer, I'm well beyond a normal residential landowner, property owner. It's a totally different category of investors, okay? So to give you an idea, I think it's more than 5 properties. There's less than 15, 16,000 people in Australia own that amount of properties. A lot own 2. Few own 3. When you start to get 4, 5, 6, 7, you're talking very, very small percentage of the market. So small that we don't really move the market one way or the other. The market is really moved by first home buyers and first time investors, a bulk of your property sales. So even Chinese investors, I don't really have an issue with them because they're not really, they were for a time buying the stuff that regular Aussies were buying, but we've sort of canned that now for a while, as has Canada. We've also closed a lot of the student investor loopholes that were open. Now they've shut down a lot, so that's led to a decline a little bit because that was the last couple of years. And now what's happening is people are starting to buy property again like regular Australians. They've watched this 2-year downturn, then they've watched it start to tick up again, and now they're buying hand over fist. So, you know, I mean, Nathan Birch is someone I have a bit of contact with. He's quite a substantial residential property investor in Australia. I think he's got 200 properties. So don't quote me on that. Might be more, might be less. Now, I talked to him a little bit. That's sort of the people I talk to. You know, most of my friends have got more than, property friends have got more than 5 properties. So I'm dealing with it. It's a higher level information set than what the Mike Martin subscribers are used to. If I was to provide some kind of an analogy as to what kind of level of data Mike Martins are giving you, it's more along the lines of a Dave Ramsey type approach, which is effective for a small group of people that get stressed out by having debt and say all debt is bad and blah 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 blah. It's actually it's very it's a bit like the gold bug. So I mean, I'm clearly a little bit of a gold bug. You can see here. That's a 5 ounce, 5.2 ounce melt value approximate chain. So to buy them new, I can get one in Sydney brand new for 19,000, and that's about the cheapest. That's in Australian dollars. That's about the cheapest one of them you can find in Australia at the present time. Now I bought that back in September for 10 and a bit. 10,000, roughly 10,000. I could comfortably sell that today for probably $17,000, and that's between September and now. So I mean, that's just another asset. It's not even close to where my knowledge is. Not my best area of knowledge, but it gives you an idea that I can buy in and out of assets and make a profit in a very short period of time. Now, I'm sure a lot of Mike Martin's subscribers are gold bugs because of the level of financial language these subscribers and Mike Martin's use in that channel. So someone like me is able to read the comment section and read the language that comes out of people's mouths, as in the way they talk about debt and income servicing, cash flow, capital. Like there's a certain language comes with a level of knowledge, and I'm very quickly able to ascertain where people are in their financial education journey. Is one way to put it. So, you know, I mean, that the gold chain alone there is probably, you know, most people's house deposit here in Australia, what they've got saved. So it's not peanuts, and that was spare money I had sitting around. So it's not like it's still significant to me, but it's, you know, I'm just sort of demonstrating there. Two types of guy would buy a chain like this. One would be like a broke idiot with a shed full of dirt bikes and boats, and the other guy would be someone that maybe has a bit of coin. So, you know, I've got here, I haven't inherited multi-million dollars. I haven't inherited anything. Actually, the little bit amount of money I was going to inherit the other day, I actually gave it to my younger brother because I don't need it. And for a long time there, I wasn't going to get any inheritance, which is why I've done the things I've done and become who I am today, because I didn't have an inheritance. I didn't have a safety net. I'm a working class person. I've got two trades. I'm a carpenter and a painter, but I don't do that anymore. I just do the real estate thing and survive on passive income, basically. So just looking at this chart again, house price to income ratio. So Sydney, Auckland, you can see there. So my issue with Mike is that he's putting posts up comparing, you know, blue collar, working class, middle class sort of houses in not capital cities, so not New York. He's using like Miami, Florida, places like that. They're not Sydney, they're not Melbourne, and they're not Auckland. So these are capital cities, right? So you've got to compare apples for apples. So while Sydney does not have everything New York does, it is probably comparable in value. You know, you could say, what is the price of a condo with water views in Sydney versus something in New York, and you could make that comparison. I could show you Sydney stuff that's dearer. I could probably show you New York stuff that's a lot dearer, but that's the comparison you need to be making. So I provided an example to Mike on the response video, which I'll put a link in the description to, of a property in Beenleigh, which is 200, I think I worked out, it said list price $259,000. Beenleigh is about 25 minutes from beachfront, Gold Coast CBD, Brisbane CBD, Logan CBD, which is another city. It's probably 10 minutes from the CBD of Logan. Okay, now Beenleigh, I've already had it pointed out to me that's a heap of shit property, because you're dealing with people, A, they don't understand the own markets they're in. His own subscribers who live in these areas don't understand they can buy properties this cheap. They don't understand the dwelling, the makeup of the dwelling construction. So I'm a carpenter painter. I understand everything from the footings to the paint on the walls, okay, the bathrooms, you name it, I can do it pretty much, okay. So they're looking at what looks like a shitbox property. What they're not realising, for $250,000, so it's about a $20,000 to $30,000 income discrepancy in a comparable area. What I'm saying is comparable to what Mike is saying. Now, the house Mike has shown is a better house. It's a nicer looking house from the outside. I can't comment on the construction of that house. I'd have to see it up close to be able to do that. But the house I've shown is probably a 600 square metre, 500 square metre blocks, maybe it might be a 700 metre square block in a, you know, somewhere that's probably got wide streets. It is a blue collar working class suburb, so all that's required there is to reclad it, render it, paint it inside and out, new bathroom, new kitchen. I could probably do that for 20 to 25 myself. It might cost someone else maybe 50 to 60,000 to do that. The benefits of that home are it's hardwood, it's 2-story, it's affordable for everyone, even probably people on one income can buy that property. You can't get the new home buyer grant because it's existing home. And that Beenleigh is in what's called the growth corridor between between the Gold Coast and Brisbane. So basically you're talking low risk, low amounts of debt, high cash flow, high possibility of capital growth in the short run, and there's buildings going up around there, left, right, and centre. It is the new boom area. Now, you think Beenleigh, I also think, when I hear Beenleigh, I think Logan, and it's not a good area, it's a very working class area. Okay, it's sort of similar to Nerang, would be another comparison. Nerang's probably even better than Beenleigh. But that would not stop me buying and investing in that area, and it is just one example of the hundreds and hundreds of properties I can provide that are the same price as what Mike has shown or cheaper. I can do that over and over. I do that, as I said, I'm in the top 1,000 people that use realestate.com.au in the country, and I get that sent to me every year. So we'll go from, you can see there, capital cities, Sydney and Melbourne. It's a little bit under, you know, if we said that this should be 2017, it's not going to have changed that much in that amount of time. And what's probably happened now, because interest rates have dropped, you know, we're talking nearly 2% cuts in some cases, so this number is going to be lower. So the same properties are now cheaper, and then payments are also a lot cheaper. So people are now more able to afford these properties in Sydney and Melbourne, which right now are actually good buying. So in the 2 years where Mike was doing videos of don't buy Sydney and Melbourne, it's going to collapse, it's going to blah, 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 I was telling his subscribers this is the time to be buying in Sydney and Melbourne. Now that's passed, and pretty much everyone in Australia, well, I read it in the comments section, people are generally believing that the property dip has been pretty much over with. I mean, when Corona finishes, which it's kind of finishing up now, people are going to slowly go back to work. There is a lot of financial pain out there at the moment with the coronavirus. There's been a lot of stimulus pumped into the market, like a ridiculous amount of stimulus. It's wartime stimulus. So that's just one more reason for property prices to not collapse, is the amount of funny money they're pumping into the system. It's not physically possible for property to do the things that Mike and the subscribers would like for property to do. Okay, it's affordable now. It's going to be affordable into the future for a time, but this buying window, particularly for Queensland, is closing. So I think we're going to see like a Sydney-style boom in Queensland. So Queensland generally performs better in the second half of the 18-year property cycle, which is about, I think it's 200 to 300 years worth of real estate data, is the 18-year property cycle. I'll see if I've got a copy of that. Just give me a second. I may have a copy of the 18-year real estate cycle here. I just can't remember what I've got. Just won't be a second. What I'll do, it's not that, but okay, so I'll just bring this up. This is a Gold Coast. This is an area where I invest. I have property here. I have over $1 million worth of real estate on the Gold Coast. So you can see what happened through these periods. You've got the 87 stock market crash right there. What did property do? This is the median price on the Gold Coast at the time. What we're talking, 120, whatever that is. Okay, that's what property did after the 87 stock market crash. High interest rates, 17%. What did property do? Probably, maybe you'd say it was that dip there. Well, that doesn't even register for me. That's not even like, I wouldn't lose a minute's sleep over that. Okay, and what happened after 17% interest rates? So my uncle, back then, he built a motel. Now, he built a motel on, I think it was hard money, I'm not sure, because it was in an area that it was not the ideal time to build a motel. And I think he was paying 19, he might even be paying 20% on his money back then. It just was the wrong time to do it. I think if he'd have done it 10 years later, I think he would have done really well. But I remember as a boy this period quite well. And my dad at the time had a lot of real estate back then. Now, he doesn't at the moment. He's got one house at the moment. I'm not going to go too much into my parents' financial decision. All I'll say is life happens. And that can be anyone. That can be me. That can be, you could get cancer. There's any number of things can can screw you up, could be a divorce, could be, so just taking all that into account. But the data that I'm providing you is solid. Yes, it is PRD nationwide. Research, which people are going to say, well, that's a real estate agency. How are you going to use that data when it's just from a real estate agency? Well, real estate agents are some of the most knowledgeable people in real estate because they live, breathe and eat these markets that they buy and sell in. Now, the one quote that I will disagree with real estate agents is the location, location, location. There is some truth to that, but that's more something that helps a real estate agent earn more commission. So if you're talking like a long-term forever home, something that you're going to own for 10, 15 years, then maybe you'd use the location, location, location saying that everyone knows, I'm sure. Otherwise, I think most people should be looking to buy a rental property first and not a principal place of residence, okay? So that's, people don't know the prices in their own regions. I know the prices in my own region very, very well. In pretty much every region in Queensland, you could ask me and I'd be able to tell you the price within $10,000 to $20,000 off the top of my head with no internet. I'd be able to do that quite easily, okay? So we're back to this chart again. So I'm jumping all over the place. This isn't scripted. I haven't written out a thing to talk about. I've just got this data. So you can see the 91 recession. I can't remember what that was. Anyway, property grinded higher, slowly. Now this was a big one. There was two things happen here in this period. Now this is what I'm expecting to happen again. Now what happened here? We had this 50% discount on capital gains. They had big capital gains tax for a while, so that might have caused the slight upturn just there. The Gold Coast to Brisbane highway completed, so again, you could say that was a contributing factor to this next thing. So what is not listed on here, and it happened about, don't quote me on this, but it happened about probably, I'm going to say, probably there. Okay, so what happened there was the introduction of the first homeowner. Well, there was always a first homeowner grant. What they did was I believe they doubled the value of it, and then they applied it to existing property. So there's two policy changes there, which were at a median price of what, 200,000 that happened in this area. Okay, so two changes. The first homeowner grant, I think it was 10, it went to 20, or it might have been 15. It went to, I can't remember it so far back. I can't remember. And then the other big change was applying that to existing property. So you could go and buy. Back then, existing properties were dearer than the new because they were established suburbs. Now it's the other way. The new properties are actually dearer than the established suburbs. So back then you were getting 600-800 metres square worth of land. Now you're getting like 300-400 metres square. Like it's basically a house. There's no land now. But that led to a doubling of prices in like no time at all. So that single policy change to the first home buyers grant back then, which is stimulus, okay. You can see what prices did. They went from 2 to 4. Okay, now I'm expecting, this only goes to 2015. I'm going to try and get an updated one. Prices are around about, probably a little bit higher, probably close to 600 now. Median price, maybe 650. But I'm going to try and get a newer piece of information, which maybe I can share with you later. So you can see the stimulus that is being pumped into the market. It's way, way higher than this. And they're already talking about changes to the first home buyer grant right now, presently. So you're going to see this happen again. And people can say, well, how can prices go from $500 to $1 million? Well, it happened in Sydney, it's happened in Melbourne, it happens everywhere. Okay, it's not uncommon to any real estate market for a house price to double every 10 to 12 years. It's roughly, it might be 8 to 12 years. It depends where you look. And it's basically to do with the cost of money, and the cost of money is tied to interest rates. So if interest rates go from 7% to 3%, that weekly payment, which is actually all people care about, is the weekly affordability figure, which is back to here. So house price to income ratios. Now, people do this calculation in their heads, right? people know that they earn, let's say back then it might have been $600 a week. Now they know in the top of their heads, whether they admit it or not, they know that they can afford $200 to $250 a week or whatever it is for a home to buy, and that figure is a constant. So if they're earning $800 a week, it might be $250, it might be $300, $900,000. It's everyone has a figure in their head based on their income of what they can afford to pay per week. The final purchase price of a house, although people look at it, it's actually not the main criteria of buying a house. It's actually the weekly payment. So you'll go up to, most people will go up to just about their maximum, nearly their maximum borrowing capacity within reason. Some people will max it out straight away and go bankrupt. Other people will probably go to like 70% or 80% of what they can afford, what they're approved for, which is probably sensible for a first property. And they base it on that weekly payment. So when you've got a $500,000 house that someone can afford and the interest rate goes from 4% to 2%, they can now afford a $700,000 or $800,000 house. So what happens is these buyers feel like millionaires even though they don't own anything yet, because they can now afford a $700,000 house. And they bid the price of real estate up to match the weekly payment that they could afford previously based on a percentage of their disposable income. So it's not going to matter. It's nearly pointless to look at the price of a house in every country. You really need to be looking at what people can afford and what interest rates are doing. And I'll just see if I can bring up. I haven't got it saved. I'll do that in the second part of the video. So what I've got beside me is the ASX 30-day interbank cash rate futures implied yield curve. So that's a big statement. What that allows me to do is forecast interest rates out to I'm going to say out to 2022. Okay, so with reasonable level of accuracy. Okay, now most people in their whole lives will never even hear of what that chart is or what it means, will be able to explain it to me. I'm honestly struggle to understand it myself. I just know that it does work. But, you know, so I'll read it again. I'll say it again so you can, if you get a pen, write it down. So the ASX 30-day interbank cash rate futures implied yield curve. So look that up. Okay, that's an ASX document. It's published every week, every 2 days, every 3 days, whatever. I print this out. It's on my fridge. It's stuck to my window here beside me. It's basically a chart of interest rates as an easy way to explain it. So it's not to do with the price, it's to do with the weekly payment is what I'm trying to say. It's how people base their purchase decisions, whether it's a new car or a new TV, people get interest free, whatever they do, they base it on what they can afford per week. They go, I can afford to pay $20 per week for that thing, whatever that thing is or that widget or whatever. So people know they can afford $200 per week. If $200 per week goes from affording a $400,000 property to a $600,000 property, people and the market bid the price of property up to that $600,000. They bid it up to the same point at which it was affordable before. The amount goes up, the amount of money gets injected into the system. It gets sucked up into all asset prices, art, gold, land, shares, crypto, everything. So it's is it congruent, is that the right word? It's a mean of the amount of money in circulation, supply and demand, and investor psychology, and just normal purchaser psychology, I'll call it, from normal first-time buyers and first-time investors. So anyway, if you could just focus on that weekly payment and figure out what happens to interest rates when that interest rate goes down 2%, and it's likely going to go to 0 or below, and I think most people would accept that. I've been saying negative interest rates for about 3 years now, and everyone thinks I'm crazy. Now we're actually looking at negative interest rates in Australia, and they're having to reconfigure the banks here to be able to, so the computers can actually work with negative interest rates. So I'll just go to, I'll see what I can bring up next. Just give me a second. So I'm just going to bring up a suburb. So this is an area of interest to me. Now, over here where my pointer is, that's Ipswich. Okay, now over a bit further, over here is Brisbane. That's a capital of Queensland. So Brisbane, you can buy a property right now for between 280, probably 300,000 to, well, as high as you want really. But I mean, middle class, blue collar suburbs, 280 to 400. $400,000 in a capital city area in a reasonably good neighbourhood. Obviously, the lower end is in the more working class areas. The 400,000 is starting to get in middle class, good areas. But what interests me, I'm not really interested in those properties. I am for the purposes of growth, and they're good long-term holds and stuff like that. But what I am interested in is properties out a little bit. So not necessarily out here. This is out here to Toowoomba. If I keep going this way, out this way, towards that red bar, that's Toowoomba out there. So I don't really want to be here because it's too far to drive to Ipswich. So Ipswich, which you can't see there, is attached to Brisbane. I mean, a lot of people would say Ipswich and Brisbane are the same city, pretty much. I mean, Ipswich is 20 minutes from Brisbane. Ipswich is its own city. It has its own council, everything like that. You can see Brisbane there, so that's Brisbane, that's the capital. Ipswich is, if that circle is Brisbane, Ipswich is like there, okay? So I think of Ipswich and Brisbane as the same city. I think of Logan, Ipswich, Brisbane, even Beenleigh as probably Brisbane. Beenleigh, you could kind of say it's Logan, Gold Coast. It's sort of Logan, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Beenleigh, you know, Springwood, those areas, they're very close together. They're all within half an hour of each other. And you can buy property there. I dare say I can find units right now down around the $100,000 mark in those areas and up to as high as you want. So areas that I like are places like Rosewood, Willowbank, the working class areas. I know this. What they do is they allow you to keep your debt low, your risk reasonably low, because you've got the tenants here can be, some of them might be unemployed. You might have one person working, a mum at home, so it might be one income. But what that does is provide you good cash flow and good upside for capital growth. So the potential to make money in these working class areas is far less risky and far more likely. Okay. Now Amberley there, that is a Air Force base, huge Air Force base. That is basically employment central right there. So all of these houses in here, you're basically going to have no vacancy. I don't have vacancy in my properties on the Gold Coast, which is a highly tourism economy. Middle of Corona, we've got all the hotels closed. I tenanted both properties. Sorry, I lied, one property, middle of Corona. I had 23 applicants for one property in the middle of Corona, and I raised the rent $20 a week from $4.30, I think it was, to $4.50 a week. Okay, in the middle of Corona. So bear that in mind. The Gold Coast, highly tourism reliant area. There's no tourism. There's no one's working. Everyone's staying at home. Same as everywhere. I have no vacancy. I've had no vacancy in my properties for a period longer than about a week, and often that is because I'm doing a repair or something like that. The thing with vacancy and everything, what about vacancy? And banks put it in their calculation. Banks are, what about allow for a substantial amount of vacancy? What I will say about vacancy is it's a function of price. So if you have a vacant property and it's vacant for more than a week, it's too dear. Okay, so all these greedy landlords, they're not actually greedy, because if they were and they were charging $1 million a week for rent, their property would be vacant and they'd be bankrupt. So landlords have to meet the market, whether it's up, down, sideways, whatever. We have to meet the market. So I have to know what the rent prices are in these suburbs, what my debt loads are, what my LVR is, what maintenance issues, what the amount of things I have to know to buy a debt instrument and purchase property and rent it out. When you're talking a lot of property, like more than 5, it's significant. Okay, your risks are, well, they actually get less the more properties you, as long as you, there's a set of rules I can tell you to follow which will actually lessen your risk than say a mum and dad investor. So every property you buy, you're actually diversifying your assets across different cities, towns, regions, economies, you know, currency cross rates, you name it. There's a, you know, interest rates, different lending facilities, different overdraft facilities, different banks. You can trust companies, you know, S-corp, stuff like that. There's so many things you can do with property. Superannuation, which is a 401k in America. So many things you can do with property that you can't do with other assets, and the banks want to loan on it all day long. They do not care. Recession, depression, boom, bust, they do not care. They want to loan on property. That is how they make their money. That is how the government pays its bills, is people like me paying rates and paying taxes and blah, 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 blah. It's just not an asset, particularly in Australia, that is highly risky. I'm getting up to 39 minutes here crapping on. This is what happens when you join the army. You're able to talk shit for 2 hours. Anyway, so we're going to... So in this area, anywhere around Amberley, which you can buy cheap stuff, even in Ipswich, you can still buy cheap stuff in Ipswich, Redbank, plenty of places around there. Now, they are working class areas, I know that, I know the risks. But you can get really cheap stuff out here. If you're prepared to go a little bit further for your first home and commute, join the Air Force, buy a couple of properties, move around a bit, come back to your paid off properties in 15 years, which is about what you can do it in. It's a smart move, you know, commute every day, buy, use your defence loan, whatever you can do. It's doable, okay? So, okay, I've got a magnifying glass, that's handy. I don't know how I did that. I had to download this screen cam app. I don't actually have one. I probably should buy one. I bought this one for $10 and it doesn't actually do the video of my face, which I'd like to show, so I'm going to have to try and get one that does that. Now, I've crapped on for far too long about property here, and I don't even know if this has made any sense, so I'm going to have to watch it back and see if it does make any sense. I'm just going to bring up a few other charts here to end this video. So, you know, these are variable interest rates over the last, you know, back to 1982. So you can see the trend there, okay? And they're not going to jack it. They can't jack up interest rates to 17% again. It's all relative. So back in the, let's say, 2000, you could see a 2, 3, 4% rise in interest rates. That was achievable. It was affordable. It was realistic. Now, because of the numbers, you're talking less moves in interest rates. That is until the financial system, we're probably going to go off into a new sort of a system in the next, it could be 4 years, could be 12 years. It's in there somewhere. We are going to go to a new system. And one of the benefits of debt in real estate is that you carry that asset using someone else's money, so the banks, into the new system. So the real estate will just revalue into whatever it's worth in the new system. People in Zimbabwe, I actually worked with a guy in Zimbabwe who lived through the hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. Now, he said to me, he said, obviously people that bought gold did extremely well, but he said people that bought real estate did really, really well. And he believed real estate did better than gold did, okay? And it was people that held debt on real estate through the hyperinflation. And what happens is you end up paying your asset off using the bank's money at tomorrow's dollars. So the amount of dollars go up, the price of the real estate stays where it is, the debt pretty much stays where it is, interest rates fluctuate a little bit, and you pay the asset off in hyperinflated currency, which you're going to have plenty of. You'd be willing to wheelbarrow into the bank, typically into the chute they've got at the time for all the currency. Well, I'm speaking hypothetically here, and you'll be paying your houses off. Which is money, not your money. It's the bank's money you're paying off at low or negative interest rates. It's going to partially pay itself off anyway. So I'm going to bring up another chart here. So what else we got here? Probably a lot of you have seen this one, the Germany hyperinflation. This is the sort of thing that can happen to asset prices. Now this applies to land, shares, real estate, gold, art, did I say art? Crypto, you name it. This chart could apply. You can see how quickly this can happen. Now, who among you thinks that this is going to happen to gold and not real estate? It's not going to happen. You're going to see oil, everything. Everything is going to go do this. Bread, shampoo, dog food, whatever. It's all going to, there's no secret here. Okay? There's no secret they're printing money. The game is print as much money as possible, inflate the debt away in the Western economies. It's just the way it is. It's just the system we're in. You can fight it all you like. You can say it's going to zero, but we haven't done this yet. Okay? It's not going to zero until we do this. We're going to do this first. We're going to have little dips here and there, and then it's going to do this. We're going to go to a new system, and whoever bought real estate back here is going to be laughing up here, okay, as long as you've got a garden and some seeds and cash alternatives and things like that. Okay, so that's that one. Let's go back to, what else have we got? Here's a, oh, that's a massive article. Hang on, I'll just shrink this down. Okay. So this is the Gold Coast Bulletin. It was around about the time when they changed that first homeowner grant. what happened to prices. So you can see everyone thought that the Gold Coast real estate boom was over, or it had peaked, and then after Christmas they had a lull, and then prices just took off. And it was something that everyone in Queensland remembers what happened to Gold Coast real estate. We had a pretty severe recession on the Gold Coast prior to that, so it was they weren't able to sell houses for a long time, and then prices just rocketed. They sat there for ages doing nothing, and then they couldn't give their houses away at one point, but they were still worth 180, 200,000, and then they doubled in value in a very short space of time because of stimulus. Okay. So what else we've got here? This is actually an economist. One of the few economists I follow is Martin Armstrong. So this guy, look him up yourself. He spent a bit of time in jail because he wrote a system of predicting the fall of economies to the day in BASIC, I believe, and he refused to hand it over to the US government, so he had to do a bit of time in prison, and to my knowledge he was never actually charged. Now, you can see what he said here in 2020 with the business cycle, debt cycle, whatever you want to call it. He didn't know about Corona then. Now, it's not perfect, but it's very close. Now, this is also very close. 2016, 2017 was the peak in Sydney, Melbourne, right? So this has already proven itself, and I can tell you the Gold Coast bottom in property, in my mind, was 2012, so he's already got 2011 there. That was right as well. So we've got 1, 2, 3... at least 3 points in recent history I can identify this chart as being accurate. So I'm not worried about anything till we get to about there. So 2028, 2029, I will be getting my affairs in order. Most of my shit will be paid off in full by then, but I will be certainly winding back my excuse me, winding back my risk a little bit for this period. Okay. So this is the time period you need to worry about, not now. Okay, we're going to get to here. This has happened before. It's going to happen again. It's just history repeating itself. Okay. Now this is one of the. I keep looking at this. I've been talking about this 2032, 2028 to 2028 to 2032 time period forever. I have been talking about this forever, and I believe this chart said. Copy that, save it, print it out, keep it at home. That chart there is, you can bank on that, I think. What else have we got? Dow Jones. Now, this is just, the stock market index, one of the main stock market indexes, not the main one, it's only like 30 companies. The one you want to follow is the S&P 500, Standard & Poor's 500, top 500 companies. So you can see here price and time cycles. So you've got a time cycle, then you've got a price cycle. Then you've got a time cycle, then you've got a price cycle. So this is I'm going to say that's probably a time cycle through there. Then you've got a price cycle, then you've got a time cycle, then you've got a price cycle, time, price, and that repeats over and over. And this is for all asset classes, okay? Now these time cycles are not if you were to buy at the top and sell at the bottom, which is what most ordinary investors do, is like your mum and dad investors, that's what they do, because they can't get their psychology right. It's a big thing. I can't put enough emphasis on investor psychology. And who constitutes an investor? It's not a mum and dad investor. That's not an investor. Okay, they're not really looking at the numbers and the locations and the debts and stuff like that I'm looking at. They're not the same level of competency. So you can see that. It's just one chart. This is stuff I look at. I look at it less and less now because I don't have to. There's a Sydney property price growth chart over 20 years. So look at that. Do you want to be Mike right now going real estate's going to zero? Do you want to be Mike right now going real estate's going to zero? I certainly don't. And I'm not. I'm aggressively buying. I will be aggressively buying. I honestly hope this Corona thing goes for another 8 months. I don't think it will. But this is opening up some massive opportunities for me. And I think when people see what this is going to do to values on the other side of this, I think they're going to be, you're talking eye-bleeding prices, and people are going to wish they'd listen to people who actually do this for a living, not people who own comic book stores. I think knowledge of business and collectibles and stuff like that is probably as good as anyone, maybe. I don't know him well enough to know whether that's right or wrong. Here's another article about Sydney home prices. It's a bit fuzzy, but you can see there. It isn't the first time we've talked about high house prices and what constitutes. This was back when interest rates were 17%. You know, I mean, property as a percentage of disposable income was more affordable, is more affordable now at the current prices at 2 to 3% than it was at $100,000 at 17%. So it's all to do with the interest rates and the weekly payments is what I'm trying to say. And you need to do apples to apples comparisons between the markets. What's this one? Annualised inflation rate. Now, you know, I'm just going to throw these things up here as more stuff I'm looking at. Is an intersection of 4 long-term cycles. You know, all of these sort of stuff. When you get inflection points in the data, when you get multiple sets of data and you get inflection points, you've got to take notice of those points. Okay. Not everyone is an economist. I'm certainly not an economist, but as far as property goes, I'm not as good as you're going to get, but I'm reasonably good at it. Okay, so this is the sort of stuff we look at. We don't just pick up a dart and throw it at the board and buy a property and buy and hope that it goes up in value. I really don't give a shit if my property goes up and down in value. It doesn't affect me at all. It will sit there and pay itself off regardless. As I carry low debt loads, here's another one. So here's a global business cycle. It's pixelated. Some of these things aren't great. So I carry my lowest or highest. Lowest LVR, I think it's like 35% is my lowest. Most of mine are close to 50% equity. So myself personally, I can afford for property to drop 50%. Even on the one with 35% equity, you'd be surprised how far banks will let you go into negative equity before they start calling loans. Because the thing is, if I'm 50%, if I'm sitting on a 50% loss, everyone else is doing way worse than that because I've got a huge chunk of equity before I've got to worry about losses at all. So I'm not fazed about property going up or down. I don't invest that way. This is a property. This is the property I'm actually trying to build. I keep putting it off and buying more rentals. Now this is a ½ an acre I own on the ocean. Now I was going to build a single level home here and just rent it out, and I just think it's going to ruin the block. It's got a little glimpse of ocean from that block. I could have bought a smaller block with better ocean views, but I wanted the space, so I bought the space which I can potentially subdivide using a flagpole property, and put another property down the back. But this is obviously probably going to be a big double-story house with a wraparound deck. The ocean's over this way. And I'll probably put a pool there. That'll be a shed. I'll maybe put a tennis court down here. Now I bought that freehold. I then remortgaged it and bought another couple of properties. But I will be spending probably $300,000 to $350,000 just on the building for this block. And I keep putting this project off into the future because I'm trying to, the more rentals I buy, the better my income gets, and it's easier for me to do bigger stuff. I may even do 2 townhouses or 3 units and then rent it out and treat it purely as a business, because I'm not really emotional about real estate. I'm heavily involved in it, but I'm very clinical with how I think about it. I can buy and sell stuff and it doesn't faze me at all. I don't get caught up in all this doom and gloom stuff. It doesn't worry me at all. So that's, I mean, this is sort of, it's not going to be a forever home, but it's you're talking, it'll be a $700,000 or $800,000 property finished, and I'll probably have that done inside of 2 years, depending on how many properties I buy between now and then. The further I push this off into the future, the bigger the house is getting. So my wife has just sort of got that idea in her head. The longer she waits for this property, the better it's going to get. So I've also got market crashes. Let's look at some market crashes. So now, here we go. So we're talking Corona now is, everyone has pretty much worked out it's the flu. You can see here what was this? This was cumulative real wealth. All these recessions and panics and blah, 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 blah. What happened? What happened? Even as far back into the 1890s, 1920s, even 1929, everyone remembers 29. This was actually the problem here, 31. 31 was where people lost all their money. But if you'd have bought here, wrote it all the way up there, then you lost all that amount of money, then you just write it up again. You know, it's not, if you're buying here, it's only a problem if you sell, and as long as you can maintain your payments, you know. I mean, you can do the thing, you can do the Dave Ramsey thing, save up cash, build a house, buy a block, you can do that. The thing is, I'm going to outrun you all quite easily the way I do it. I use the system, I use the fiat money system, I use the debt system, I use it sensibly, and I make purchases strategically, and I do them consistently. So I do multiple purchases per year, and I keep doing them. Okay, and they all cash flow, they're all low debt loads, high LVR, low risk. You know, so it's not as simple as big numbers equal unaffordable property. It's a much larger discussion. So I'll probably see if I can bring up anything else. So I haven't really talked much about Mike, but you may be able to gather that I know a little bit more than the average idiot buying real estate, and a lot of people are idiots buying real estate. Maybe you can't, maybe you think I'm full of shit. I really don't care. It doesn't affect me at all. I don't have to do this video. It's actually cost me $10 to buy this stupid screen cam app to do this fucking video, which I'm a little bit annoyed about because the app doesn't do what I wanted it to do exactly. It's closed, but I'm going to have to now probably spend, it was a $30 app I probably should have bought. I was a tight ass. So anyway, look, shout out to Mike Martins. I'm not trying to shit on him in a lot. I'm just saying that this is an area that I specialise in, and I'm a very small number of property investors. I'm not a mum dad investor out there. Just completely ignore the property I'm in right now. So, my wife was, we potentially thought she was going to die very recently. She's a veteran as well. She's now a lot better. We moved out here for some peace and quiet. It was a lifestyle change for us. And I wasn't sure that she had more than 3 to 5 years to live, but that now seems to be a lot longer. So that led to us making some decisions which we wouldn't have normally made. And now we're sort of looking to grow again, but we've still been buying property this whole time. So I hope this is nearly a fucking hour. I cannot believe I can talk this long for a fucking hour. And I'm going to leave it there. I will do a second video follow-up to this video. I hate these guys that do these hour YouTube videos that no one has a fucking hour to put aside for someone on YouTube, particularly me, and here I am doing it. So I'll do a second video where I will quickly go over properties you can buy close to a capital city within 20 minutes, 25 minutes for 200, 250,000. I can do that all day long. I can do acreage properties for 200, 250,000. I can do CBD units for $1 million. You name the property you need, the type of income you've got, the credit, blah 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 blah. I can pretty much tell you where you need to buy to make money, to make sensible real estate purchase decisions. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, and hope you all have a, what day are we? Monday. See, I don't even need to know what day of the fucking week it is. That's my life. Okay, what you see right there, me smoking a cigar on my balcony, having a few drinks. That's my life. I don't go to work. I don't need to go to work. I don't run a business. I mean, property is a business kind of, but it's not really like it's a part-time business. It's not full-time. It can become full-time if a few things happen. But for me, it's 5 hours or less a week, and that's how I like it. I don't even do the YouTube stuff anymore because I don't really. It is an income stream for me, but since they fuck with the algorithm, I'm less inclined to do YouTube videos. So I'm going to leave it at there, 58 minutes, and I will do a second follow-up video to list the prices of assets, real estate you can afford to buy right now with very little money. And I may even look at some new houses that you can buy right now as a rental, and start as a rental rather than buying your own house might be a good way to go for a lot of people who might not have the income to buy a property. They can use the rental income to service that loan. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and thanks for watching.